When I started babysitting, I thought I hit the jackpot when a wealthy family paid me $200 to babysit their child for a night. I never could have guessed this would have ruined my life forever. The children were extremely well behaved, and everything went smoothly the first night. The young couple must have thought I had done a good job because words spread quickly around the rich neighborhood that I was a great babysitter choice. This was perfect for me. Most families around here pay way better than where I live since they all come from a long line of wealthy families, but I was always suspicious about some of them. You hear rumors about wealthy people and some creepy stories, but I never actually believed them. Sometimes, I'll babysit for a few hours and make a couple $100. Other times, the parents want me to stay the night while they go off and get a hotel room so that they can be away from their kids for a change. That is where I make the big bucks. A couple of days ago, a husband and wife texted me, asking if I could stay the night at their mansion and watch their 7-year-old little girl for them. I happily agreed, not knowing this might be the last time I ever see the outside world again. When the day finally came, I drove my beat-up Dodge Charger to the edge of the rich neighborhood. I made my way up this private driveway, which I'd never noticed because the entrance was hidden behind the trees surrounding the entire north side of town. I drove up this steep, winding driveway for what seemed like 10 minutes before I finally saw the house come into view. Out of all the houses I babysat at, this was hands down the most gorgeous one I've ever seen. I hoped I would get some good money for this. I exited my car and went up to the front porch, where I knocked on this gigantic wooden door. A few seconds later, a beautiful woman in her mid-30s answered and introduced herself as Mrs. Smith. She called her husband down, and shortly after, an extremely handsome man in his 30s came walking down the grand staircase holding an adorable little girl in his arms. The couple seemed very anxious to leave, and even though they were both gorgeous people, I could tell that underneath all of their beauty, they were exhausted and haggard from having to keep up with their 7-year-old. They were excited about having an entire night, and couldn't wait to get out of there as fast as possible. However, before Mr. and Mrs. Smith left, Mrs. Smith handed me several pieces of paper and told me that she had written down a couple of instructions for me to follow throughout the night. She stressed the importance of following her instructions, and I assured her I'd give them a look. I waved to the pretty young couple as they drove down the driveway in their expensive Mercedes and closed the door behind me. I gave the instructions a quick once-over before folding the papers and stuffing them into my back pocket. I would look at them later, I told myself. How stupid I was to do that. Mr. and Mrs. Smith's daughter, Lily, was a very nice young girl who warmed up to me almost immediately, or so I thought. We spent the next few hours playing games and watching TV. After finishing our 5th episode of Teen Titans Go, I noticed it was getting late and asked Lily what her bedtime was. She shrugged, not giving me an answer. That's when I remembered Mrs. Smith's instructions. I quickly pulled out the folded pieces of paper and scanned through them. When I saw the words "Lily needs to be in bed before 8 p.m., I checked the time to find that it was almost 7:45. "Well, it looks like your bedtime is right now," I said, lifting Lily off the couch so I could get her ready. She brushed her teeth, and I tucked her into her California king-sized mattress. "Good night," I said as I was leaving her room. That's when she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't forget to lock my door before you leave," she said. I stopped walking and turned back around towards her, confused. "What do you mean, don't forget to lock your door?" I asked. "Why would I need to lock your door? What if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night?" She looked at me innocently and shrugged her shoulders again. "I don't know, but Mommy always locks my door before I sleep. She says she does it to protect me and herself. I don't remember what happened after falling asleep, but Mommy says that I always try to leave my room at night, which is bad." I looked at her dumbfoundedly and didn't know what to say. What sort of parents would lock their child in their room at night? Mommy told me she would leave instructions for you to follow, and locking my door is one of them. She said I had forgotten to read the rules. "I'll lock your door." "Good night, sweetheart," I stammered. She gave me a big smile and rolled over in her bed. I closed her door and noticed a latch drilled into the door frame that would allow someone to lock it from the outside. I closed the latch and then walked back downstairs so I could read the rest of Mrs. Smith's instructions. When I first saw the pieces of paper, I thought they were just instructions that told me what show Lily was not allowed to watch or how to operate the surround sound. After reading them, I realized I was completely and utterly wrong. Hello, Annie. I'm glad you agreed to stay the night and babysit Lily for us. She's such an angel. I'm sure you will get along very well. I know our house might seem old and scary, but don't worry because nothing bad will happen to you as long as you follow some simple instructions, the note began. First, Lily must be in bed with the door locked before 8 p.m. Do not open her bedroom door after 8 p.m. I repeat, do not open Lily's bedroom door after 8 p.m. She will try to convince you to open the door in many different ways. She will cry, scream, and threaten you until you give in, but do not listen to her. She can't hurt you as long as the door is closed. At this point, I was confused about why I would leave her locked in there if she was screaming and crying to let her out. Something wrong was going on here, but I continued reading. Between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m., ensure you remain in the living room with the lights on. Around this time of night, you may hear scratching and growling from Lily's room or other parts of the house. These noises are nothing to worry about as long as you stay in the living room. Watch some TV to pass the time. We have a lot of movies to choose from. After 9:30, do not venture into any dark areas of the house. I recommend that you turn on as many lights as you can before 9:30 so that you don't accidentally trap yourself. You might also happen to see a pair of yellow cat eyes looking at you through the darkness occasionally. Please do not stare at them for more than 30 seconds. These rules were getting more messed up by the second. I started sweating, my body feeling glued to the floor as I read over the strict but extremely terrifying rules that were put in place. At around 10 p.m., it might begin to sound like several people are walking downstairs in the basement. Do not worry because they cannot get to you as long as you stay out of the basement. I know it sounds unlikely, but you will begin to feel an overwhelming urge to walk down into the basement around this time. If this happens, go into the kitchen and drink a cold glass of milk. This usually helps. The urge will most likely pass after about 10 minutes, but if the urge is still there after 10 minutes and you don't think that you will be able to stop yourself from walking into the basement, then call either me or Mr. Smith and we'll tell you what to do. Now, the next part is vital. You will be sleeping in our guest room upstairs for the night. Before you go to bed, make sure that you leave a plate outside your bedroom door with a piece of raw steak on it. You can find the raw steak in our refrigerator and leave a glass of milk next to the plate. The final rule is don't eat meat after 8. They might see it as a threat and will most likely attack you. P.S. Throughout the night, you might hear a dog whimpering from somewhere inside the house. We don't have a dog, so don't go looking for it. I hadn't realized what I had gotten myself into. I finished reading the rules at 8:30, and the growling noises had just started. It sounded like they were coming from every room in the house. My hands were shaking as I reread the instructions. The realization of what I was dealing with was sinking in. I was trapped in a house with something that was far from normal. The growling noises were getting louder and seemed to be coming from every room. I forced myself to calm down, taking deep breaths. I had to follow the rules, no matter how bizarre they were. Over the next few hours, things only got stranger and more terrifying. The growling turned into scratching, and sometimes I would hear what sounded like a soft whimpering like a dog. But I remembered Mrs. Smith's postscript. They didn't have a dog. I stayed in the living room, keeping the lights on as instructed, and waited. The urge to go to the basement was strong, but I fought against it, going into the kitchen and gulping down glasses of milk. Around 10 p.m., I heard footsteps in the basement but didn't go down there. I stayed put, watching TV to distract myself from the cacophony. During one of these distractions, I noticed a different piece of paper on the coffee table, a sheet tucked away under a magazine. It was a meal plan for Lily written in Mrs. Smith's neat handwriting. My heart skipped a beat as I read through it. It was a weekly meal plan, but it wasn't the usual fare to feed a 7-year-old, liver on Monday, kidneys on Wednesday, and heart on Friday. It was a diet composed of human organs. My stomach churned as the horrifying truth hit me. Lily wasn't just some ordinary child, she was something else. I heard a loud crash from upstairs as the realization dawned on me. It sounded like a door being broken down. The noise was followed by the soft padding of feet on the staircase. I could hear Lily humming a lullaby as she descended, her voice echoing through the eerily silent house. My heart pounded as I stood rooted to the spot, my mind racing. I thought back to Mrs. Smith's instructions and insistence that I follow them exactly, but it was too late. I had made a terrible mistake, and now I was about to pay the price. I could hear Lily getting closer, her humming growing louder. It was then that I realized the horrifying truth. I wasn't here to babysit Lily. I was here to feed her. I was the meal that I had to make a choice. I could either hide or run. I didn't have much time to decide, so I ran upstairs. As I got closer to the top of the stairs, I could hear the footsteps stop. A low growl replaced the humming. I didn't want to see what awaited me, but I had no choice. When I reached the top of the stairs, I saw Lily standing in the hallway, her small frame bathed in shadow. Her eyes were glowing a sickly yellow, and her lips were curled back in a snarl, revealing sharp fangs. She was no longer the innocent child I had met earlier. I had to think fast. I grabbed the first thing I could find, a vase, and threw it at her. The vase hit her square in the head, and she stumbled back, stunned. I used this momentary distraction to run back downstairs. But as I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard a blood-curdling scream. Lily had regained her composure and was now coming after me. The living room was my best option. There was no way I could outrun her. I slammed the door shut and locked it. Then I moved a large chair in front of it. I had bought myself a few minutes. I glanced around the room, trying to figure out how to escape. The windows were of no use, as they were too small. And even if I could get them open, I was 2 stories up. Then it hit me. The fireplace. It was big enough for me to fit through. I ran over to it and pulled at the screen. It was stuck. I had no time to mess around, so I punched through the screen. Glass sliced into my hand but ignored the pain. I could hear Lily approaching, her footsteps thundering down the stairs. I crawled into the fireplace, the bricks scraping against my skin. But I didn't care. All I cared about was escaping. As I reached the chimney, I began to climb. It was a tight squeeze, and the soot made it difficult to grip the walls. But I pushed on. I had no other choice. Lily scratched at the door, her growls reverberating through the house. I kept climbing, pulling myself up the chimney. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my leg. I looked down and saw Lily's hand gripping my ankle. She was trying to pull me down, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I kicked at her, my foot connecting with her face. She let out a cry of pain and released her grip. I didn't waste any time. I continued climbing, pulling myself up the chimney with all my strength. And finally, I reached the top. I pulled myself out onto the roof, my heart pounding. I didn't have time to catch my breath. I had to keep moving. I looked around, trying to figure out where to go. Then I saw it, a drain pipe. I ran over to it and began climbing down. The metal was slick, but I held on tight. When I reached the ground, I took off running. I didn't look back.